towns that I savor, like my hometown that I favor, that old place down the long road that I'm traveling to. There's the jokes at the barber, told by Cleve from the hardware, about the stories that always make the news. Our town, wherever I may roam, I'll always have a place that I call home. Our town is very plain to see. There'll always be a part of you in me.
The town of Paris is nestled in the Grand River Valley. The beautiful landscape inspired one travel writer to call Paris the prettiest town in Canada. During its prime as a leading industrial textile center, a large labor force was imported from England, suggesting another name, the Manchester of Canada.
Hello, I'm Barry Penhale. The view of Paris, Ontario behind me was enjoyed well over 100 years ago now by an American from Vermont by the name of Hiram Capron. He was an enterprising sort, and his local business successes led eventually to his nickname in these parts, King Capron. Other names synonymous with Paris, Ontario would include Penman's, Bell, and Apps. This is the story of their town.
Hiram Capron first arrived here during the spring in the early 19th century and came upon the edge of a hill that overlooked the bend in the Nith River at the present-day site of Paris. He dismounted, tied his horse to an oak sapling, and felt the presence of a lovely spirit below, which he later recorded in his journal. I gazed spellbound upon the beautiful valley, then in its natural beauty and rugged grandeur. Before mounting my horse, I made up my mind to own this lovely vale. This first impression remained with the American, and 5 years later he returned to fulfill his dream, to clear a farm and build a town. Hiram Capron arrived here at the place called Forks of the Grand, where there existed a mill and a plaster bed. In an attempt to realize his dream, Capron made a bid to purchase land. However, he met resistance from William Home, a wealthy landowner who refused to sell his property to a Yankee. The first American settlers were proud to be known as Yankees and looked upon Buffalo, not Toronto, as the city. But after the 1837 rebellion, anti-Americanism was strong, and they became more loyal than the Loyalists and more royal than the British. A year later, Home relented and agreed to sell Capron his land, buildings, and plaster rights. Hiram brought his family and settled on these grassy hills and well-treed acres. In 1831, King Capron, as he was called, proposed changing the name of the village from the Forks of the Grand to Paris. This new name was suggested by the plaster of Paris beds along the river. Capron met with some resistance, as the name Paris suggested to the people of the time mobs, guillotines, and ambitious ladies. For a while they settled on the name Nithville, but soon enough it was changed back to Paris. The period between 1830 and 1900 was a golden age of individual enterprise. Prior to this time, Paris was basically an isolated community. The arrival of the railway did much to further encourage the influx of new business. The most successful businessman in the earlier years was Norman Hamilton. He built a distillery, bought mills, and invested his profits in local industries. By 1850, he had made his fortune. Melvin B. Church founded the Alabastine Company of Paris. He discovered that by grinding together plaster of Paris and glue, he could produce a desirable wall paint, and he named his product Alabastine. He went on to buy several gypsum mines and mills. After 1865, the dominant business figure in the town was John Penman. His woolen manufacturing business made an impact around the world by shipping goods as far away as China. Penmans recruited workers from milling towns in England. Their passage was paid on condition that they promised to work for a year and repay the company. It would seem that many of the girls who arrived here before the First World War were lively and pretty. Young men for miles around came to court them, and much of the courting ended in matrimony. World War I built a strong Canadian nationalism among the English immigrant workers. During the Depression, Penman's actually grew financially. With the post-war baby boom, Penman's products were in heavy demand.
Actually, Paris was the cradle of the knitting industry in Canada.
Such was the impact of industry on the town that for 146 years, the rhythm of life was set by the meter of the factory whistle. The textile mills gave to the town some of its late 19th century characteristics. Levi Boughton, a New England mason, brought the cobblestone influence from the upper New York states in the 1830s. At the turn of the century, the people of Paris were divided into two separate bodies, those who worked for Penmans and those who didn't. Not only was the population sectioned, but divisions within the landscape of the town were apparent as well.
Cobblestone buildings was a fad that went through North America from the years from 1825 to 1860. When the Erie Canal went through, when it was finished, there was an awful lot of unemployed masons. And they turned their hand to whatever they could. And one of the things that they were adept in was building cobblestone buildings. And so in upper New York State, this became quite a rage. And it was very much a status symbol. Of all the buildings, we've only lost one. And the remainder are in very good condition and very much cherished, and quite a unique aspect of Paris architecture. the most important buildings aren't the ones that are the most noticeable. And I guess what I'm thinking of are the very many stucco buildings we have, and they're just simple workmen's cottages right up to very elaborate homes. And there are a lot of stucco buildings because of the gypsum plaster Paris found in the riverbanks, and of course it was cheap and it was readily available, and so very much put to use. But they're in very good condition on the most part, and they really are very attractive. We have quite a cross-section from the plaster homes, wooden, brick, stone, and cobblestone. The extension of our business area is Grand River North, and it climbs a hill. And on either side of this hill are great huge homes, and it was once called Quality Hill, and it was very much the in thing to live there. Our driving tour takes you all around, not only to the main streets, but the quieter streets in Paris, so you see everything.
Set atop Quality Hill is a mansion built for Hiram Capron, but transformed when John Penman bought the property in the 1890s. He named it Penmarvian. Along with the great business entrepreneurs of the town, Paris had its share of outstanding creative people. The painter, Paul Wixon, achieved international recognition during his residence in Paris from 1885 until his death in 1922. Wixon was particularly noted for his paintings of horses. To him, they were the emblems of Canada, for it was the horse which had carried the pioneers through the Dominion, broken up the West, and served the mounted plainsmen of the territories. One of his paintings, The First Furrow, was used on the Canadian $2 bill for a number of years. Another renowned painter, author, and illustrator was Arthur Hemming. His sketches captured the spirit of North Country trappers and canoeists. Sports has been another area in which Paris natives have excelled. Cyclist Ralph Axton, born in Paris in 1877, won 3 Canadian championships. This young Paris boy was to become a famous all-around athlete. Syl Apps began his professional hockey career with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and in a 10-year career, he played on 3 Stanley Cup winning teams. Every town has its share of eccentric characters, but none has ever had any to equal William and Robert West. William had emigrated from Scotland to the town of Paris. Disillusioned when he did not find fame and riches, he retreated into a special world of his own.
He was a lamplighter for the streets of Paris. They had a sort of an old shack of a home on the banks of the Nith. It was very pretty along there, and they operated several boats. He was known as the Bard of the Nith. Bobby West, of course, made quite an impression on me as a young boy. He was known as the entertainer, and he had an old-fashioned gramophone with the big horn mounted on a little wagon which he pulled around the town. He was sort of a harmless character, but he was very highly thought of in the town.
Included in Paris's colorful history and many celebrations were the cries of jubilation originating from Arnold's Pharmacy, August 6, 1876. The young inventor, Alexander Graham Bell, backed by a small minority of believers and a large majority of skeptics, put Paris on the map as the long-distance town. The world's first long-distance telephone call, received from nearby Brantford, contributed another chapter to the town's history. Paris today, in the valley of the Grand, enjoys an agricultural-based economy. As a continuing part of town life, agriculture's importance is recognized each Labor Day weekend in the Paris Fall Fair. The Agricultural Society held its first fall fair in 1858. Generations have grown up around the fair, a greatly anticipated event for everyone within the community.
Let's give her a big round of encouragement. All right, get set, get ready. At the count of three, I'll pull the pin. Eric can save himself so that nothing goes wrong. And the way he does that is when he feels any pain whatsoever, he just lets out a big loud scream, and I'll save him by magic. We're going to find out if indeed. 1, 2, 3.
Set atop the hill is the grave of Hiram Capron, with its inscription, "Here lies the town founder." From this site, one can view a town that still retains the beauty its founder first recognized. From the vantage of his window, Harry Howells enjoys the same view daily, and he fondly remembers his years spent along the side streets of Paris, delivering bread in his horse-drawn wagon. Paris, Ontario has led a full and exciting life, which has combined both personal and industrial achievement. It is a community that conveys a warmth of spirit reflected in the town's buildings and, most of all, its people.
It's the people of Paris. I enjoyed the people, the schools. There's a beauty of the place, the kind of people that live here, the things that you can get involved in. I think Paris is just a wonderful place to live.
Many towns that I savor, like my hometown that I favor, that old place down the long road that I'm traveling to. There's the jokes at the barber, told by Cleve from the hardware, about the stories that always make the news. Our town, wherever I may roam, I'll always have a place that I call home. Our town, it's very plain to see, there'll always be a part of you in me. I'll see the folks up on Main Street who will always take the time for a story over coffee at the old Five and Dime. The flag on our town hall through the years has flown free, a tribute to our hometown's history. Our town, wherever I may roam, I'll always have a place that I call home. Our town, it's very plain to see, there'll always be a part of you in me. There'll always be a part of you in me. There'll